Are you wasting your life without even realizing it? There was once a young man named Kai who lived carelessly, spending his youth sleeping in, playing games, laughing the days away. He didn't read, didn't work, didn't think about the future. Until one day, a single sentence from his strict uncle changed everything. From a directionless drifter, Kai began rebuilding himself, starting with the smallest habits until he became someone with purpose, passion, and the power to inspire others. So what was that sentence? And what made Kai abandon laziness to embrace discipline and growth? Join us as we uncover the journey of Kai, a story of hitting rock bottom and rising back stronger right here on Kunzy Podcast English, where we don't just tell stories to listen to, but stories that awaken something deep within you. Kai used to believe that youth was a time to live without worries, without pressure, without plans. He thought the future could wait, that he'd always have time to figure things out later. So he chose the easy path. The path of comfort. No goals, no structure, just drifting. His days began well after sunrise. After gaming through the night, he'd wake up around noon, roll over to check his phone, and scroll through social media for hours. Sometimes he wouldn't even leave his bed until late afternoon. Breakfast and lunch blurred into one, and the night always came too quickly. Lit by the glow of his screen, filled with meaningless clicks and empty laughter in a dark, messy room. Kai didn't read. He didn't learn new skills. He didn't ask himself where he was going or what he was becoming. Whenever someone questioned his lifestyle, he'd smile and say, "I'm still young. I've got time." He wore that phrase like armor, deflecting reality with a laugh. But what Kai failed to notice was that his happiness came cheap. It arrived quickly and disappeared just as fast. Each morning, he woke feeling more hollow than the last. No progress, no growth, nothing to be proud of. His youth was slipping through his fingers like grains of sand, unnoticed and unrecovered. Sometimes, Kai would feel a strange emptiness, like he was missing something important. He had all the freedom in the world, but none of the fulfillment. Maybe it was because he wasn't really living. He was merely existing. And one night, as the world around him fell quiet, a question echoed through the silence. If tomorrow was your last day, would you regret how you spent today? It was a weekend afternoon like any other. Kai was sitting at his desk, clicking mindlessly through a never-ending video game, lost in the blur of pixels and noise. Suddenly, the door creaked open. His uncle, stern, successful, and known for saying little, stepped into the room. He didn't smile. He didn't ask how Kai was. He just stared at him for a moment. Then he said, in a calm but powerful tone, "Don't waste your time." That was it. One sentence. No lecture. No raised voice. No follow-up. He turned, closed the door, and walked away as quickly as he came. But for Kai, that single moment shattered something deep inside. Those 4 words began looping in his mind like a haunting melody. He tried to keep playing his game, but something felt off. His hands trembled slightly. The screen no longer gave him joy. For the first time in a long time, Kai felt the silence creeping in, and with it, discomfort. Don't waste your time. So simple, yet it hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't advice, it was a wake-up call. Kai knew his uncle didn't speak unless he meant it. He didn't see the cluttered room. He saw a wasted youth, burning fast without a single spark of meaning. That night, Kai didn't play. He turned off the computer. For the first time, he just sat there. No games, no noise, just him and the heavy realization that he'd been carelessly squandering the most precious thing life had given him: time. The awakening begins. At first, Kai didn't really care. In his mind, he kept telling himself he was still young. There was plenty of time ahead. No need to rush. His uncle's words seemed like background noise that faded quickly. The next day, he went back to his usual routine of playing games, laughing with friends online, hiding in a virtual world where no one asked real questions. But without realizing it, that one sentence had taken root in his mind, repeating itself quietly like a song that wouldn't go away. And slowly it began to shift something deep inside. The game started to feel boring. The laughter didn't sound right anymore. A strange emptiness crept in, not loud but persistent. Time felt like it was slipping away, and no one noticed. Then one night, as the screen glowed in front of him like always, Kai sat still, staring, and suddenly a question rose from the silence within him. What am I doing with my life? No one answered. The room was quiet with only the soft blue light of his monitor and a young man finally hearing his own thoughts clearly for the first time. That question didn't need an answer. It was the answer. He realized he wasn't really living. He was just drifting, existing, waiting. He didn't change everything that night, but a tiny spark lit up inside him. Just a flicker, but enough to make him stop and think, if not now, then when, Miss Rise? And this time the drive didn't come from guilt or pressure or anyone else's voice. It came from within. He wanted to change for himself, for the person he knew he could become if only he gave himself a real chance. Kai had no idea where to start. But for the first time, he knew this much with absolute certainty. He couldn't go on like this anymore. The simple plan. Kai didn't start with anything grand. He didn't set a goal to become a millionaire or change the world. He wrote down just 3 small actions. Wake up early, read a book every day, and write down one idea before going to bed. These 3 simple steps became the first cracks in the old version of himself he was trying to leave behind. He wrote the plan in bold letters and taped it to the wall right in front of his bed. Every morning when he opened his eyes, it was the first thing he saw. Every night before sleep, it was there to remind him. No alarms from others, no external pressure, just a quiet promise between him and himself. At first, it was rough. Waking up early felt like a battle. His eyes burned, his thoughts were foggy. Holding a book felt strange. His ideas didn't make much sense, sometimes just random thoughts. But that didn't matter to Kai. What mattered was that he was doing it. Moving forward, no matter how small the steps. He started feeling proud of the little things. Finishing 1 page of a book, writing down a random idea, getting out of bed without hitting snooze. Things that once seemed silly now became the foundation of a new version of himself being built from scratch. No one saw the change. There were no applause, no spotlight, no dramatic soundtrack, just him and that quiet wall. But right there in that ordinary space, Kai was quietly beginning a journey that one day he'd look back on and thank himself for not giving up on day 1. A new habit, waking up early and reading. Kai started with something he once believed was impossible, waking up early. At first, it felt like a war. His body felt heavy. His eyes begged to stay closed. His mind offered every excuse to keep sleeping. But once he pushed through those first 5 minutes, something surprising happened. He noticed a stillness in the air, a freshness he had never felt before. The morning was quiet, soft, and peaceful. The city was still half asleep, and in that gentle silence, Kai felt like the world belonged only to him. No rush, no noise, just Kai, the sound of birds outside his window, and a brand new day unfolding in silence. He started to fall in love with mornings, with that quiet moment of victory over himself. Then came the books. At first, he read just 1 page, then 2, then 10, then 20. The words became his quiet companions. Each story he read opened up a new world. Some made him feel small. Some brought tears to his eyes. But every time he closed a book, he felt a little stronger than before. He began to understand that knowledge wasn't just information. It was hope. It was the missing pieces helping him rebuild a scattered life. It was a quiet flame inside, lighting the way forward. Books taught him how to rise after failure, how to believe in tomorrow even when today was full of doubt. From someone who was once lazy and unmotivated, Kai was slowly becoming a person who cherished the mornings and fell in love with learning. There was no applause, no spotlight, but to Kai, this was the quietest and most powerful awakening of his life. Writing, a journey to self-discovery. Writing. For Kai, this was the hardest part of the 3-step plan he had set for himself. Unlike waking up early or reading books, which only required discipline, writing demanded something deeper. A kind of honesty with himself. The courage to look inward, into a space filled with uncertainties. At first, he could only manage a few short lines, sometimes just a single word, a passing thought, a fleeting feeling, a silent sadness with no name. But Kai kept writing, every day. Regardless of inspiration, it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. And slowly, something magical began to happen. Through the lines he wrote, Kai started to see himself more clearly. He saw the fears he had avoided for so long, the desires he had buried, the vulnerability he used to hide behind a smile. Writing wasn't just about recording thoughts. It became a journey to listen to his own voice. The more he wrote, the more he understood what he truly wanted in life. The fog began to lift. The days of living on autopilot started to fade. Even though his steps were still slow, Kai could feel a quiet shift happening within him. There was no noise. No need to prove anything to anyone, but there was one thing he knew for certain. He was moving forward. Steadily. Calmly. And for the first time in a long time, he was truly alive. Changing the way of living, avoiding the useless. Kai began changing his way of living by starting with the smallest things. He talked less. No longer did he try to insert himself into every conversation or prove something with words. Instead, Kai chose to listen. He listened to understand, not just to respond. Through that quiet observation, he started to learn from those who lived with purpose. They didn't boast, but their actions spoke volumes. Their eyes always looked ahead, and every step they took had meaning. From them, Kai absorbed focus and patience. He also started cutting out things that once drained his time and energy without giving anything back. Television lost its grip on him. Social media, short videos, flashy news headlines, all of it started to feel empty. Kai realized those things were pulling him back to the person he used to be, someone who delayed, who drifted, who was easily distracted. He knew he had to resist. It wasn't easy, but every time he said no to a small temptation, he felt himself grow stronger, a little at a time. Most importantly, Kai made the tough choice to distance himself from negative people. He didn't hate them. He didn't judge, but he understood that he couldn't become his best self while staying surrounded by those without dreams, those who never moved forward. They could laugh all day, but their lives were going nowhere. Kai no longer wanted to be stuck like that. He sought out people who inspired him, people who made him feel the urge to rise, to live meaningfully. Slowly, he felt a new power rising within him, a quiet, conscious strength rooted in clarity, in discipline, and in an unwavering commitment to change. Visible progress. Kai was no longer the lazy boy he once was. When he looked back, he was surprised by how far he had come. He was reading more than ever, not just books, but the pages of his own life. Each book opened a new door, allowing Kai to see the world through a sharper, more awakened lens. He wrote with more clarity, more depth, not only on paper but also in his thinking. The words he put down were no longer scattered, but clear, bold, and driven by purpose. Kai began to notice something powerful. He no longer felt lazy. Instead, there was a quiet fire within him, a steady energy that pushed him to wake up each morning with intent. Gone were the days of wandering aimlessly. He felt stronger, not because of physical strength, but because his mind was anchored in a clear goal. That goal gave meaning to every action, every decision he made throughout the day. Every hour that passed was no longer wasted time, but time invested. He no longer lived in wait of something to happen. He lived to make it happen. Each small step he took built momentum. He realized that true transformation doesn't come from sudden explosions, but from daily persistence, from quiet consistency. And through that persistence, a new version of himself had been born, more focused, more resilient, and more alive than ever before. The reunion. A touching moment. The day his uncle returned was quiet, with sunlight pouring gently through the windows, much like the calm that now lived inside Kai. It had been a long time since they last saw each other, but when the door opened and his uncle stepped in, Kai's eyes lit up with a warmth reserved for someone who once lit a spark in his heart. No need for long greetings. No need for dramatic hugs. One shared glance was enough to shake something deep within him. Kai shared everything. From the mornings he forced himself out of bed, the books he devoured, the ideas he wrote down, to the days where he finally felt like he was truly living. His uncle listened quietly, without interrupting, without judgment, simply watching with an intensity that saw beyond the words. After a moment of silence, he looked Kai in the eye and smiled. Then, with a calm and certainty that carried years of wisdom, he spoke a single word. Good. That was all. Just one word, yet it echoed louder than any applause. Kai stood there, overwhelmed not by pride, but by a sense of recognition that filled every corner of his being. One word, yet it washed away all doubts and validated the quiet efforts no one else had seen. It wasn't just a moment of pride. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes when someone you respect sees your growth. Kai knew his journey was far from over, but he no longer felt like he was walking in the dark. The light of that old sentence had guided him all this way, and now the smile and the single word had given him new strength. Kai realized true transformation doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it only takes one look and one word to prove it was all worth it. John realized that his journey wasn't meant to stay locked within him. The transformation he had gone through, the lessons he had learned, were not just personal victories. They were seeds meant to be planted in others. On a quiet afternoon, he began sharing his story, the one that took him from lost and aimless to awakened by a simple sentence spoken by his uncle. He spoke with a deep belief that if one sentence could change his life, then maybe, just maybe, it could ignite hope in someone else too. Some people listened intently, eyes lighting up with a flicker of curiosity, perhaps even hope. Others laughed, scoffed, and dismissed him as a dreamer or attention seeker. But John wasn't discouraged. He knew not everyone is ready to change, and some seeds take longer to bloom. So he kept speaking, kept sharing, because he believed that one sentence, spoken at the right time, could pull someone back from the edge. That belief became the fire that kept him going, even when the room was silent or the crowd indifferent. John wasn't a famous speaker. He wasn't a social media hero or a celebrated figure. He was just a man who had once been lost, drained and convinced he couldn't change. And because of that, he understood the pain, the exhaustion, and the flicker of light a single word could offer. He didn't speak to be admired. He spoke to give. He didn't tell his story to be remembered. He told it so that someone else might continue living. Because he knew that if someone like him could change, then anyone could. All it takes is one sentence. All it takes is one person willing to speak. When everything had finally settled, John sat alone in the small room that once held his frustration and exhaustion. But this time, it didn't feel dark anymore. Light streamed through the window, softly like a whisper from time itself, reminding him of everything he had walked through. He thought of his uncle, of that one simple sentence that had awakened a life buried under doubt. He felt grateful, not just for his uncle, but for himself, the version of him that didn't give up when everything seemed lost. John realized that transformation never begins with perfection. It starts with a single step, a small act, a decision to begin. That first morning, he forced himself to rise early. The first page he opened, the first word he wrote were all tiny movements forward, but powerful. There were no shortcuts, no miracles, only persistence, courage, and a heart honest enough to ask each day, what am I really living for? Time is the most precious gift life offers. It makes no sound, gives no warning when it's about to vanish. Every hour, every minute is a chance to grow or to be lost forever. John had wasted so much of it, which made him value each moment now even more. He no longer aimed for greatness. He simply wanted a life that meant something. Because in the end, what makes a person truly different isn't their fame or fortune, but how they face themselves in the quietest days. John realized that happiness didn't lie in the grand dreams he once chased. It was hidden in the smallest, quietest moments of his day. It was the feeling of calm after finishing a single page of a book. It was the clarity that came with writing down an idea after days of confusion. The relief of seeing something finally make sense. It was the smile on someone's face when he offered a helping hand or said something kind at just the right time. These things weren't flashy. They didn't require wealth or recognition, but they brought a deep sense of fulfillment that no luxury ever could. Life didn't need to be loud or complicated to be meaningful. Sometimes a peaceful morning, a warm glass of water, or an unhurried evening was enough to feel truly alive. And John understood, in the quiet truth of it all, that real joy comes from living with purpose, even if it's just through one small act in a single day. Some people said John had changed too much. They said he had become too serious, too rigid, no longer the carefree person he used to be. Some laughed and called him an old man trapped in a young body, claiming that life was meant to be enjoyed, not planned down to every minute. But John simply smiled. He knew they had never felt the emptiness he once battled. They had never woken up without purpose, lost in a routine that led nowhere. John knew exactly what he was doing and why he was doing it. He wasn't changing to please anyone. He was changing because his life belonged to him, and he wanted to live it with meaning. The criticism no longer shook him. In fact, it reminded him that he had stepped away from the crowd and chosen a path that few dared to walk. And to John, that was the clearest sign that he was heading in the right direction. Kai looked directly at the listener, eyes calm but full of quiet strength, and asked a simple question. What are you doing with your time? That question struck like a beam of light, cutting through the noise, forcing you to pause, to reflect, to face yourself. If your answer doesn't feel right, then change. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because it will never come. Just take one small step each day. Wake up a little earlier. Read one page before bed. Write down one idea, even if it feels clumsy. Help one person, even in the smallest way. Those seemingly tiny steps are the very foundation of lasting transformation. No one is asking you to be perfect. No one demands speed. It's okay to stop and rest, but never give up. Because your life won't change in one night. It changes through the small decisions you make daily. Kai did it, starting with one question, one morning, and one first step. Now it's your turn. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start today. The simple phrase, "Don't waste your time," turned out to be the greatest gift Kai had ever received. It didn't come from a best-selling book or a famous speaker. It came from his uncle in just one sentence. But that single sentence awakened something deep inside him and changed the course of his life. Now that Kai has transformed, he doesn't keep that wisdom to himself. He shares it with others, hoping that his voice today can become a reminder for someone else, just like his uncle's voice once was for him. If this story touched something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Hit the like button to let us know this message matters. And don't forget to subscribe to Kunzy Podcast English so you never miss another episode, where every story is told not just to be heard, but to change your life.